First, I had to draw on what gave me that inspiration, my father and family and neighborhood through music, and then the inspiration of the elders who were in my community that gave me a sense of pride in myself and to have more pride in myself.
One life, one passion, one focus.
You're listening to the On the One podcast. I'm your host, Phil Donaldson. February is Black History Month here in the United States. It's an opportunity for all Americans to learn about and celebrate the contributions made by African Americans. For African Americans, Black History Month is a review and realization of our identity. It gives us a sense of connection. Familiarity with our history provides a means of recognizing our captive past, extolling the achievements of the heroes who preceded us, and of passing down the knowledge to those who will succeed us. My guest this episode is Jamal Skinner, founder and executive director of the Cultural Enrichment Center of Fort Collins. Jamal has been on a mission of self-realization, creative expression, and of paying it forward to the next generation. He's also the frontman for the reggae band DubSkin, as well as an avid proponent of African American history and culture. Our conversation took place during Black History Month. It was timely, relevant, and inspiring. Check it out.
It's time to get down on the one.
I know a lot of people know you as the leader of DubSkin, and some folks know you as the executive director of the Cultural Enrichment Center of Fort Collins. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us about how you came up and how you got into music.
I'm born and raised in Long Island, New York, North Shore. I am the baby of 9 children, which was intense growing up in a 3-bedroom apartment. My father would be the root of my desire for music. My dad would sit with me, and he had an incredible vinyl collection. It was sort of his teaching for me to learning different styles of music, but it was really more based on vocalists, but the music as well. And he would grab, I don't know, maybe 30 to 40 albums out, and he would spread them all over the living room floor. And I would just point to whatever album I liked, mainly based on the cover of it. And he would begin to play it and then just give me an education about who that individual was. So it could be someone like Cannonball Adderley to Stevie Wonder, Nina Simone, the Drifters, the Spinners, Temptations, all of the old good stuff. Actually, he named me after the jazz pianist Ahmad Jamal. So that's why my name is Jamal. I was named after him, or inspired my name. So we had a family church choir. Actually, at the biggest point, I would say that I really recall when we had everyone there, it was about 26 of us, and we were all family. So it's from my father's parents on down to me. I was always the youngest one, but it was all my brothers and sisters, my aunts, my uncles, other cousins, my mother, my father. And we performed on Sundays, usually after church at my grandmother's house in Queens. We would practice gospel songs. My father led everything. And I learned at a young age, just sitting and listening mostly to how harmonies work and the beauty of the harmony of voices. So I come from a family of singers. I'm probably the worst. My dad sang all over New York, so he was known for his voice, and my father had a tremendous voice. When I was 9 years old, I started playing the cello, and I played from 3rd grade till my senior year in high school. So that was an introduction into the only instrument I can say I ever really learned to play was the cello. And it gave me a different perspective about music, learning classical music.
You started early, which was cool. And then on some level, you learned how to read music. That's a good foundation.
Yes, absolutely. My grandmother was, my dad's mother was a piano player, so she read music as well. There were some tremendous organ players in the churches that I visited as a young kid all over New York. My father was asked to sing as a guest singer at so many churches. I can't even tell you how many I've gone to and watched people cry listening to my father sing. So for me, it was about the emotion and message in those songs that sort of inspired me in my growth of becoming a vocalist.
After kind of formal training, we'll call it, you pretty much picked up things as you went along.
I'm an admirer of musicians who attempt to master their instrument. I mean, I started a reggae band when I was in high school. I sang a lot of classic rock covers too, and two other bands. So I tried my best to immerse myself in different genres in order to get a style. My father and I used to have, good debates and conversations about the difference between a stylist and a pure vocalist. That would be like Sam Cooke to Bob Dylan. Sam Cooke is a serious, pure vocalist with an innate, a natural ability to really do anything he wanted to do with his voice. Bob Dylan, on the other hand, for some people, the tone and everything may not resonate with them, but there's a beauty in being what I called, or we labeled my father and I as a stylist, and you find your own voice. And when you do that, I think it carries just as much power. That's why my favorite musician or artist of all time is Nina Simone. Because she may not have been Ella Fitzgerald, but the tone and how she mastered what she had, I think she did the best she could ever possibly do with her own voice and how she delivered the material that she performed.
Yeah, you work with what you got. Same with like Billie Holiday, David Bowie, Paul Simon. They worked within what God gave them. They created something really powerful out of it.
Absolutely. And that, I would say, was my mission early in my life, trying to figure out what my voice could do and its limitations and staying within those parameters. I left high school in New York and went to Howard University. Obviously, I grew up in the hip hop era. So I love hip hop music and did a lot of writing in that genre of music for a long time before I actually moved to Colorado. I started a band here, in 97. It was interesting. It was called Pimp or Die. And it was a long acronym: prophetic intelligence manifested permanently, overstanding righteousness, destroying ignorance everywhere. And the idea was to create how can I describe it? Gil Scott-Heron meets The Doors.
There you go.
With a hint of the Roots hip hop group. So it was a live band. We had a drummer, a stand-up jazz trained bassist, a saxophone player that was remarkable jazz talent, piano player, another guy who got his PhD in classical and jazz music, and myself and another vocalist. And then we added a DJ. So it was a really nice sound. I sang songs, we did some spoken word poetry, and we did some hip hop. It was the first time in my life that I felt completely and utterly free to create. A lot of our shows were 60% improv, which I know what sort of foundation that gave me moving forward as a vocalist, as a musician, as an artist. The ability to freely create in the moment definitely allows me now to have, I guess, a stronger sense of being a performer.
I'm glad you took it there, because I was going to ask what your songwriting process was like.
We would meet once a week, and we didn't really have formal ideas for songs. A lot of it came from concepts first. So I may show up, for example, to that jam or practice, and maybe I'd watched a movie and there was something in particular in it. I know we had a song, Birth of a Star. So I was up the night before watching how stars are born in the universe and relating it to ourselves as humans and how we birth ourselves here on Earth. And that was the conversation we had before we just started jamming, and out of it came a song. So that was our process then, for sure.
You definitely strike me as an observer of life.
I hope so. I think for all artists, it's impossible to create without observation. We all observe differently. I know you mentioned the band DubSkin. I left Colorado from 2000 to 2006. I didn't do any music, really. I lived in Las Vegas and just worked. Our band split up after years, the old band Pimp or Die. And I kind of just buried my head and became a little worker bee, doing electrical work in Vegas, and just had a yearning to create music again. So I had an opportunity to move back to Colorado. I thought I'd start back here and see if I could reconnect with some old musicians. And I connected with a gentleman who was in a different band when I was in Colorado, and he was a drummer. And we met up and said we were going to start a reggae band. And that was in the summer of 2006. And I believe it was about May or June when we got all the musicians together. And for me, it was a beautiful experience because, again, I was trying to find my voice again. The genre of reggae music brought out a great deal of who I am. I'm a observer of the social ills, I guess, or the social climate around me and within the world. I just feel like the artist that I am always in a space of addressing those things. I don't really make too many songs or write songs that don't have that within it.
Yeah, because reggae tends to be a very, very conscious style.
Yeah, and there's the fun side. There are those who make the fun love songs, and I'm all for that. For me as an artist, I stay in the lane that I know works for me. I feel like, and maybe it's an ego thing, but I feel like I have a lot to say. And that particular music gave me the platform to be revolutionary through my music. As a kid, it was always those type of songs and artists that inspired me. Gil Scott-Heron, Nina Simone, some of Marvin Gaye's tunes, like Inner City Blues, Stevie Wonder, in the hip hop world, KRS-One, Public Enemy. Those were my go-tos for information and a feeling of loving myself as a Black man in America. And so I obviously was aware of the social ills around me growing up and that exist today. And I just feel like it needs to be more in the music because the music is probably one of the greatest teachers to society. So for me, that's what I choose to do. And this band DubSkin allowed me to do it.
I attended your Zoom meeting, your Black History Zoom meeting this past weekend. And one thing that I learned about you, one new thing I learned about you is that you love to read. So I would imagine the books you read really help to inform what you say in your music as well and your outlook on life.
Yeah, I've always been, I guess a nerd is a good word, but I guess I can say in my youth, I was a semi-avid reader. Most of what I learned early. I had a yearning, again, when I was in my early teens, 13, 14 was really it for me. I began to, like I said, listening to KRS-One, Public Enemy, it inspired me to learn about Black culture. And I began to take Black history classes 2 days a week after school to seek the information. And the teacher I have, I'll never forget him, Dr. McMillan, set me on a path and told me that if I spent at least 45 minutes a day reading something about my history, that it would change my life. And it has. So yes, reading is like a drug for me. It's really like a huge puzzle of just putting pieces together. So when I find some information, I'm always looking for something to connect it to or something that I've learned in the past that has connected it. So in the music, what I create comes from that. A lot of it comes from the ether of media, any form of media. I was watching the movie about James Brown. I think it's called Get Up, Get On Up.
Get On Up, yeah.
Yeah. And there was the one scene in that movie where he was dropped off by his father to that woman who was running that brothel. And she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, but everybody's got to be somewhere sometime. And just that one phrase, I was like, got it.
Heartache after work so I man can pay the rent. A hard day labor put food on me table, but me pocket still coming up with length. Day by day I'm on slave, never feeling like this is time well spent. In the end, will we all look back and wonder where has all this time went? When we look in the mirror, do we really see a face filled with confidence?
concept for a song, that's how I did it. And to answer your earlier question, that's my writing process now, is taking a concept or just a statement or phrase like that and then building off of that. And how I write, it's really strange, but it's always worked for me because I try to simplify everything so I can make it personal enough that when I deliver it, it has the impact that I'm hoping it has on the audience. So if that song, for instance, I thought about the idea of just being in the moment. So I might take 40 words and break them up into 10-part segments. And obviously it's like writing hip hop where your end line rhymes with, the word. And I try to create each line as a phrase or a statement that could stand alone in and of itself. That's the hope. That's my method, that each line has power if it is just removed and read by itself. So that's my writing process. That's what works for me. It allows me to emotionally be extremely attached to what I'm delivering when it's time to deliver it.
So you lead with passion.
Definitely. I know people think I'm extremely emotional, but it's passion. That 6 years that I didn't have it, I can tell you, if there's a thing called musical depression, I definitely had it. I was yearning and yearning and yearning to the point that I had to give up all of the financial security that I had in the job I had to take 10 steps backwards to give myself the nutrition of making music or being around it.
I feel you on the musical depression because I spent a bunch of years being outside of writing music and creating music. I had to come back to it. Something about music that just feeds you, right?
It is a jonesing, I guess, or a yearning that is like a fix that you need. I know even through this last year of COVID has it's causing a lot of problems for a lot of different forms of artists. But I think any artistry that you are passionate enough about, it'll keep you up all night. It'll drive you to a point of madness if you can't have it. I now am working more on the music production side where everything that I'm learning and going forward is so exciting to me, being a part of that music thing again, just being a part of it somehow, some way.
Just keep moving forward, just keep learning. When we first met, you were giving me a tour of the Cultural Enrichment Center. Talk about the passion that helped you to start the Cultural Enrichment Center.
After the incident of George Floyd that the whole country and world had watched, that's something I think that affected a lot of people. It was an emotional state I was in watching that. I was thinking about a year passing of my mother's death. My dad had died long before that, but I had no parents to really go to and physically reason with, as well as one of my good friends that I make music with now. He does a lot of hip hop music. He lives in Colorado Springs, but we grew up together since we were 5, 6 years old, like brothers. And his mother passed within that same week, and he lives in Colorado Springs. So I went down to see him and help him sort of gather his mother's things from her apartment. And it was an emotional time for both of us. She was like my second mother. My mother was like his second mother. So on my drive back, I had to pull over my car, and I think I cried for about a good 20 minutes hard and just thought about what it is that I needed to do going forward. And it was like these two women were telling me, Jamal, you got to do more, and you have the ability to do more. So I'd spent a lot of time in my own reading and studying and wanting to learn. And I thought it was time to give more of myself to the next generation. So when I got back to Fort Collins, I knew in my head what I wanted to do, to create a space that I grew up in, to recreate the very center type atmosphere that I grew up in my own neighborhood that gave me the foundation, I think, that made me who I am. Yeah, so I challenged the city of Fort Collins to help support in myself and whoever else wanted to be involved to create the Cultural Enrichment Center of Fort Collins, which would be an after-school program to give specifically Black kids an opportunity to succeed academically opportunity to learn about their culture, their folklore through arts, music, dance, as well as education. I had no doubt in my mind that it would work. I had no doubt, even if I had to finance it myself, that I was going to give of that 100%.
Let's talk about inspiring young people to learn about their roots as well as to express themselves creatively.
First, I had to draw on what gave me that inspiration. And as I said before, it was my father and family and neighborhood through music. And then the inspiration of the elders who were in my community that gave me a sense of pride in myself and to have more pride in myself. And so the community center I grew up in, there were elders there that guided me and really gave me the desire to learn as much as I could about Black history, African history, my Blackness, and how I navigate through this place of America. So I just wanted to recreate that and to give that to the youth here in Fort Collins. Obviously, they're underrepresented here based on population. And I know that feeling where I grew up in Long Island. I lived in the projects, all Black neighborhood, but I grew up around extremely affluent white community. So I know the feeling of not feeling confident in who you are when you're surrounded by those who don't see you at all.
Right.
And barely see you. So my idea was to take everything that I had learned from elders and to hopefully be an elder that gives that to the kids here. So we've learned this through education, but we've learned it through the fun parts of arts and music. These kids are creating songs in here and just getting them to write and learn to write and to journal and how they can turn that into a musical form has been incredible for me watching them do it. It is a joy. It's a joy I cannot explain. Yesterday, we had our African drumming and dance class, and just watching them so excited about that, as well as them creating these formats, social media formats, their own YouTube channel. We're about to start in March their news broadcast here where
Nice.
They're going to learn all the ins and outs of video production, music production, watching them gravitate to those things and the joy I see in them and their real desire to evolve within it is all that I was hoping for. We're only 7 months in. I know by a year in where they will be because the process takes time and it's a journey and it's not a sprint, but they are definitely fully engaged in finding these ways of learning about themselves through arts and music.
You're kind of feeding off of their energy. They're giving this new opportunity to learn and learn how to express themselves.
Absolutely. There's 4 basic tenets we have here: reliability, accountability, working through challenges, and starting where you stand. Those are the 4 things that we focus on. So the reliability and accountability comes first about being here and understanding that as a person to have both of those is very important for any progress in life. They have a wonderful world that they are living in now, and it is being motivated, promoted via these platforms, and watching them grab a hold of it and having an opportunity to do it. Most of them know of these things, but may not have the opportunity for it. So my job is to find ways to get all of that in here at the center to give them an opportunity to grab a hold of it and run with it.
Yeah, I will tell you, opportunity, it's everything. The way I came up, I didn't have a lot of exposure to a lot of things. And it wasn't until my senior year in high school, I went to a boarding school and the world opened up to me. And then after that, I moved to Montreal and a friend gave me access to the McGill Electronic Music Studio. And that just exponentially moved my music learning forward, my learning about sound production and how to do noise reduction, how to put stuff down on tape. It really gave me an opportunity to grow. So the fact that you're doing this, making this freely available to these kids, that's really going to change some lives. So talk to me about where you're really taking all of this. What's your vision?
The real vision first is to create a space where these kids obviously can come and feel at home. And in that home, they're growing together as a small community themselves, that they hopefully build relationships and community with each other that last them a lifetime. That's my biggest hope and goal. I've modeled it after West African processes that we did in America, where it was this rites of passage and this initiation into a space where it is a sacred space of love and respect. The end goal for me is to watch these young people grow and to move beyond expectations they may have had for themselves, that they leave here knowing that they have gone 10 steps further than the expectations they had for themselves before they came in here. My hope is to continue to grow in this community and maybe in a few years to have up to 50 students. We have about 13 now. The more, the better. The other goal is to make major community connections where greater opportunities within a community that I may not be able to provide for them here, but that they have access to. So for me, the goal is to find those things that they can have access to, whatever it is that they may be into. If one child in here is really into, let's say, welding or pottery, that I make the connections for them to have the opportunity to learn and master those things. And like you said, that is access and opportunity. Once that is given to any individual and they find a niche that they are in love with and passionate about, and they have the opportunity to have access to it, the wonderful things that come from that are beyond anybody's inspiration. That will take any child to levels and heights that they probably never would have imagined that they were able to accomplish.
And it's a significant part of identity. It gives you a sense of achievement to accomplish something, to create something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm watching it slowly beginning to emerge here. You know, it was a rough 5 months coming into this space with COVID and everything, just structure and people being able to come, not being able to come. And I'm just now seeing in the past 3 weeks a whole new feeling in this space with these kids, and they see the possibilities. I've spoke to them about the idea of possibly going to West Africa in a year from now, and they see the possibility. If they understand that it's possible, and I show them a way where they are the catalyst for getting themselves there, and it's not just Jamal doing it for them, then it creates a drive in them that I don't think they would have if they weren't in this space. And it's a collective drive.
You're going to be presenting at the upcoming Fort Collins Startup Week. Tell us a little about that.
One of the main goals, too, is to answer that other question and connect to this, that I always saw a potential for one, gaining a skill or anything that they desired or they were passionate about, and understanding the entrepreneurial side of that and how you begin to use that to market yourself and move yourself forward. Originally, I had the idea with a partner of mine to create a solar sustainable greenhouse where the kids would be involved in this. So maybe out of, let's say, 10 kids, maybe 2 take to the side of water irrigation part of it. 2 may love the idea of learning how plants grow and how you can take that and it becomes a market where you produce something that others buy from you. Others may take to the idea of, wow, I can't believe I can take the energy of the sun and turn all the lights on in my house. So this was the basics of the idea. And we have moved forward to do a presentation for Startup Week where we are creating here in Fort Collins, Colorado. The first was called agrivoltaics. So it sounds like a fancy word, but it is literally just the connection between electricity and agriculture. And usually the electrical side of it is, in most cases, the solar part of it. Sometimes these solar panels are the shade that provides not too much of the heat of the sun. And they have these new solar panels that let through the correct light, correct UV rays that work best for plants. So what we've created for these kids, they will be growing specific vegetables. I gave them an option that they would grow the vegetables to create either a hot sauce or a salsa. After their own deliberation, they said they wanted to do a hot salsa. I said, okay, well, let's research salsas that are more connected to you and your culture. So they began to research. They found a couple of recipes of a West African style salsa, and they have created what they feel like they need in order to make this salsa. So at the end of the day, this project that we're doing, they're going to learn the solar part of it. They're going to learn the agricultural part of this project, the building and development part of it, of building these raised beds. There's a company in town we're connecting with that's going to teach about the nutrients in soil. So they're going to learn those components, the sustainability of it, how you can sustain it and how it works for you. And then at the end of the harvest, they will begin to create a hot salsa that they are going to market, label. They're going to do all the marketing for it, the design for it, the canning of it, and they will then have the great exchange. So we are setting up now to be in the local farmers market, I believe in mid to late August. We're going to try to get 3 weeks that we can be there and that they will sell their product. And so through that whole process, there's a learning in all of it and a connection to something that is theirs. I am trying my best to be as much hands off as I can because the excitement that is in them in order to do it. And this is then adds to the other component that I told them. If there are things that you want as a collective group here, you have all of the ability in the world to make it happen. So what you get from this product in this great exchange that you will sell to others is an opportunity to take the proceeds from it, and then you can get on your flight and go to West Africa. That is the goal of this whole project, and we're excited to give this presentation to the Startup Week.
We're going to have to wrap it up, but I just want to ask you to give a few words of inspiration to a young person who might be out there struggling to make sense of their place in this world.
One thing is trust. I just had a meeting yesterday with a possible new student, and this is a perfect question. The first thing I asked this young woman is, what would make you trust me that I can help you? And learning first to establish what they need in order to trust is, I think, of the utmost importance for anyone around any young people. I think we sometimes think we know what's best and we think we know how to give them inspiration. But the first priority for me is them telling me how I can create trust. So for any kid out there, I would say, find an individual who you trust. And from that individual, begin to ask and have trust in your asking that they help you become a greater you. And specifically for these Black kids here in Fort Collins, confidence, commitment, and pride without ego is of the utmost importance. And I would tell them that learning who you are, and I mean culturally, learning who you are first, has a lot more importance than people have led you on to believe. You have the same right and ability as everyone around you. You just have to look in yourself and you have to go get it.
Connection to self, connection to culture, connection to community. A positive sense of identity, opportunity, and appropriate guidance comprise some of the building blocks for Black youth to gain confidence in conceiving a successful future for themselves. Having experienced a childhood of oppression and alienation myself, this really resonates with me. When I was shown that I could learn, when given the opportunity to explore my creativity within a supportive community, I gained a better sense of myself. I became a passionate, lifelong learner. Access to knowledge, tools of expression, and new experiences can light a fire that lasts a lifetime. Speaking of knowledge, be sure to take advantage of the many opportunities locally and online to learn about African American history. Our past informs our present as well as our future. Many, many thanks to my guest, Jamal Skinner, founder and executive director of the Cultural Enrichment Center of Fort Collins. You can learn more about the Cultural Enrichment Center of Fort Collins at fococec.org. That's FOCOCEC.org. It'll also be in the show notes at phildonaldson.com/one. That's phildonaldson.com/ONE. And thank you for listening to the On the One podcast. I'm your host, Phil Donaldson. You can reach me at phil@phildonaldson.com. As always, your feedback is welcome and greatly appreciated. Until next time, may you find your superpower, fuel your passion, and light it up.